Well, hello there. Well, I have no idea whether this video will be entertaining or of interest to anyone, but I wanted to take a little trip down memory lane and talk a little bit about World of Warcraft and my memories related to that game. And so I locked in my former main, I guess, the character I played the most, my druid. And if you've played World of Warcraft way back in the day, you probably recognize the armor he's wearing. He's wearing T1 raid armor from the Molten Core as a transmog. So yeah, why do I want to talk about that? Last week I went and reinstalled World of Warcraft. I hadn't played that in quite some time. I last played it end of last year when the new expansion came out, Dragonflight. And I, hold on, let me transform it to a bird. I got the key binding, hold on, and there we go. So, when Dragonflight came out, I tried it out and I liked what I saw, like the new zones and some of the quests and the new class and the dragon flying things. So I leveled my druid all the way to level 70, and then some other games caught my interest, and I didn't feel like leveling yet another character yet, and didn't think, I would continue much. So I forgot about it. I let my subscription run out, deinstalled it eventually, and now I'm back because with World of Warcraft there's one thing I noticed while we're flying above Stormwind, is that it's sometimes like revisiting like a former girlfriend, like an ex-girlfriend, and you had like this really intense relationship, and then it kind of, you drifted apart, and you still have great memories, and sometimes you visit each other to hang out and like talk about, hey, what's going on in your life, and you have all this history together, but there's no love anymore because you broke up. And it's a little bit like that with WoW. I keep coming back to WoW. Even though I have no ambitions of raiding or doing like mythic dungeons or joining a guild or anything, I just, I don't know, come back to the game. I level a little bit, level a few characters all the way to max level. I may run like an old dungeon to look whether I can find like a mount or a piece of gear that I don't have yet, and then eventually I stop playing again. So let me tell you my little story about World of Warcraft. I started playing the game shortly after it came out, and the thing is, I told you before, I was playing Ultima Online all the way until like 2004 or so, and there I met a cool guy from Norway, Tommy, and we became friends. And we started like doing adventures in the game together and hung out together. And then we came up with this idea of running our own Ultima Online private server. There were quite a few of those private servers where you would run some software on a little server, either one at your home or one that you would rent, and then you would put some software on there, and then players could play Ultima Online on your private server without paying. You weren't supposed to take money for that, of course. You could maybe ask for donations, but it was kind of frowned at, and we just wanted to do it for fun, and so we started our own little private server, and we had about 100 active players, and it was a ton of fun. And we did this with one other guy who was a friend and neighbor of Tommy. They were both from Norway, and suddenly Tommy stopped logging in. He kind of disappeared, and I was like a little worried. So I asked his friend, was like, do you know what's up with Tommy? And that friend said, well, he started playing World of Warcraft. And of course I'd heard about World of Warcraft, even though it had just been out for a few months. But I didn't hear so many good things. I didn't really have a lot of history with the Warcraft universe. I had played a little bit of Warcraft 3, but and I knew the artwork. I had seen some posters in the magazines with commercials for Warcraft 2 and stuff, but I didn't know much about the game, and I had heard some pretty bad stuff about the community, like that it was really toxic and stuff, and so I really didn't have, and I thought it was like very PvP based, that you would need to do a lot of PvP, which is not something I enjoy doing, so I had no interest, but you know, Tommy went there, and I wanted to check it out. Now back then, there was a limited, I mean, you couldn't easily get the installed CDs back then because they were sold out, and I think at some point Blizzard in Europe even stopped selling installed CDs for a little while because they were overwhelmed by the amount of players that wanted to join. They were totally like surprised by how many people wanted to play the game. At least that's what I seem to remember. It was really hard to find one of those CDs. So I found one on eBay, a used one, and I got myself a key from a website. You know, I guess that wasn't like totally legal, but I wanted a CD key, so I installed it, and it was a Saturday, and I remember, you know, reading the manual while it was installing, and then I stood right here. It looked a little bit different. I was considering installing the classic WoW client, which looks, you know, more like the original game, but I didn't because I couldn't fly around then and show you places. It was right here that I started my first character, a paladin. Now, why did I start a paladin? Well, I had read the manual while installing it. You know, we talked about that, like reading manuals before you play, and I had read up on the classes, and for some reason the paladin sounded attractive to me, because it was said it's like this holy knight, and he's a support class, he can heal, he can buff and support his allies, and I always like to play support classes. You know, I'm more of a team player. I don't mind, I mean, I don't have to necessarily play a healer, but I do like to play support classes and help, you know, my group. I don't have to be the tank or the top DPS or anything. So I played a pally, and that was okay. I was already pretty impressed with the graphics compared to the graphics I saw in Ultima Online. And then I rolled a mage and tried that. And that was really cool to run around all over Elven Forest, which is the area you see right now, and have a mage and throw frostbolts. The graphics looked way better than they did in Ultima Online, I thought. And it was way more immersive. I loved the music. I loved the quests and stuff. And so I played that mage. And I was leveling by myself. Tommy would occasionally boost me for a dungeon because he was level 60 already and he had a tank. So he'd boost me for like the dab mines and stuff. And then he would get me into his guild. And I would run like the early dungeons with some of his guildmates, our guildmates. And then I started exploring the world. And I was totally immersed into this world. And, you know, I started to travel around a bit. And for example, when I took my first griff flight, you know, griff like griffins, those flying mounts that you can, you know, you go to a flight master, you pay him a certain amount of money, and then you are put on a griff and it flies you to where you want to go. And the first time that I was flown over this area, right here, it looked different back then because this was pre-Kata, this was in vanilla WoW. But seeing this lava area and seeing dragons down there and seeing Blackrock Mountain, which I knew had like this mysterious raid in there, the Molten Core, which to me sounded pretty cool, and all these dungeons and stuff, that was, I remember flying here on that griff, looking down, you know, trying to catch a glimpse and thinking, I want to go here one day. I want to be with, you know, these other guys and raid here. I had actually seen, this was pre-YouTube, I guess, but there were sites where you could download, like people would upload videos of their raids there, and you could download them. I don't remember the name of those sites. And I would go there and watch like an Onyxia raid, a 40-man raid. So 40 raiders in a group trying to kill that huge dragon, and it looked so epic and so cool, and I said, I want to do this, I need to do this, right? So I leveled, and it took me quite some time, but eventually I reached level 60, And I was actually invited to join, like, for a raid or two, and started to raid Molten Core, which is an instance. I mean, that raid instance looks pretty old school these days and not very, I don't know, attractive and stuff. It looks rather dull. And compared to later bosses, the encounters in that raid are really nothing to write home about, right? It's like basic stuff. I mean, the mechanics were pretty easy. You would still wipe a lot, but they were easy compared to today. But it felt so epic to be in there with that huge raid group and fight these huge bosses and stuff. And then I leveled my paladin together with Tommy. He would level his hunter, I would level my paladin. I mean, paladin was mostly used as a healer back then, a clothed-in, wearing cloth armor because they had better stats. But I didn't mean to raid with that pally. I just leveled him to, you know, do that together with Tommy and get another character to 60. And I was so immersed by this world, and I thought that World of Warcraft didn't have like any kind of like a deep story or anything. And I remember that back then at the time I had to have some surgery, some dental surgery, because I think I had like an infection in my gums, and you know, it got really badly infected, so I had to have surgery. And while that was healing, I was at home, and I was, you know, I didn't feel like playing, so I went to the first World of Warcraft wiki page, and I read them up on all these stories, like the story of Arthas Menethil, and you know, a Blackrock Mountain and Medivh and stuff like that. And I was amazed by how deep that story was. Or, I mean, this is not like world-class literature, but I love the story. I saw the influences of like Elric of Melniboné or Dungeons and Dragons, but still I like those stories a lot. And I remember back then I was like hanging out at Ironforge, where we are right now, and it was like the most crowded place. You would have like, it was filled with people all over the place. And if you go to the entrance, the place, you know, the gates that I went in through, there would be like duels going on, like friendly duels between players would be going on here. And it all looked so mysterious. You know, it was really close to Blackrock Mountain, so people gathered here. And yeah, I was totally enthralled in this world. And back then, leveling took such a long time, but I didn't mind. I was in that raiding guild. We had a lot of fun. You know, I was really proud because, you know, we made actually pretty good raid progress. I was more of like a, I guess, like a backup guy. You know, I wasn't involved in every raid, but, you know, when a DPS was needed, I was invited. I had a bit of raid gear. And it was just so awesome, right? And then I eventually started this character, my druid, and started on the other continent and quested all through that continent, and it was all so cool and so mysterious and felt so big. It doesn't have that feeling anymore. I mean, the world still is pretty big, but, you know, I've seen it so many times and I've burnt myself out on it. But still, you know, it was pretty cool. So eventually, I would stop playing for a little while because I wasn't really interested. I mean, it was when Burning Crusade came out, the first expansion. I got that, I leveled with Tommy to 70, and then I remember that Lord of the Rings Online came out, which is another MMO that is still around. And I'm a huge fan of Tolkien, so I wanted to try that, and I did, and it wasn't that much fun, because even though it was very immersive, it also was very, very, very much inspired by World of Warcraft. You know, the action bars and the mechanics and the groups and stuff. And so I had just come from like a huge binge session of World of Warcraft and had burnt myself out. And I didn't want to, you know, play another World of Warcraft game with a Tolkien theme on it. I wasn't into that. So I went and played other games, offline games. And then eventually I played Warcraft 3 again, and I was captivated by the whole story, the Frozen Throne thing and stuff. And then I heard that Lich King was coming out, Wrath of the Lich King, where you actually fight Arthas, and I saw the first cinematics, and I said, okay, I think I'm gonna play this again, and I did, and that was my favorite era of World of Warcraft, as it was for many, I guess, because, you know, I loved the continent, Northrend. I loved the raids, the dungeons, the lore, the music. It was all so very fascinating. And so I was really, really playing this a lot. I started like having like lots of outs, and eventually at the end of Lich King I had a level 80 of every class, and I kept that up for several expansions, where in every expansion I leveled one of each class up to the max level, and I was raiding, I was doing dungeons, and I was just so fascinated by the game world and so in love with this continent and the expansion. And I think that's true for many of us. Maybe you're sitting there going like, yeah, same for me. And if that's so, well, you know, fist bump, bro fist. And then Cata came out, Cataclysm, which changed the world to the state it is now, you know, with all these changes. And I felt weird about it, but I still like Cata. It felt very difficult at first, because they raised the difficulty of the dungeons and stuff. But I still like the whole thing about Deathwing and the new zones and, you know, some more classic lore and stuff. And I left my raiding guild and went to a guild of, like, I guess, casuals, which had, like, it was led by this little family, and, you know, they were the core, and around them they had a lot of casual players, and then they said, hey, you know, we'd like to raid, and we know you used to raid, could you, like, help us get into raiding? How should we start? And so I said, okay, let's try this, and we started raiding. And I practiced with them, first in 5-man dungeons, then we went to some easy raids, and I, you know, was working with the healers in that guild, and was helping to gear up some tanks, and then we started raiding, and we were actually doing okay. I mean, it's not like we were knocking out those heroics and had like bosses on farm, but we were doing okay for our circumstances. I mean, we had like senior citizens in that guild who, you know, didn't maybe have like the patience to really study those fights or anything and memorize all the mechanics. Or we had people who were really busy with their work and they just wanted to join a raid in between, and we still managed to kill a lot of bosses, so that was fun. But at the around that time, I got into another MMO, which was Star Wars, The Old Republic, because I'm also a huge Star Wars fan, and I wanted to try that out. But you know, at the same time, I was just not into. It was the same thing that happened with Lord of the Rings Online. It was another clone of the game of World of Warcraft with a Star Wars theme. It had a few differences, but you know, it was just basically a WoW clone. So I lost interest again, and then I was not interested in Mists of Pandaria really, because I thought I had like burned out myself. I wasn't into the whole story of that thing. But still, I checked it out and I liked the expansion. I liked some of the stories. I liked the landscapes and everything. And but I stopped raiding. I did some LFR raids, you know, with random players, and didn't do much more than that. And from then on, I've been mostly solo playing in World of Warcraft. You know, I was playing Warlords of Draenor. I had 10 garrisons or 11 garrisons going, because I had one of each of my alts and earned a lot of money by selling materials and stuff. And eventually I ended up, you know, like in between I was quitting, I was playing the game on and off. But still, I always came back to the game, and I always just enjoyed peacefully leveling for myself, exploring the world, getting titles like the Lore Master title, where you would like do all the important quest lines and everything. So yeah, it was just I don't know. It still feels like home. I'm very much attached to my characters, of course, because I spend so much time with them. But you know, I have no ambitions at all to ever go back into raiding or, you know, doing mythics and stuff like that, or even joining a guild. I said that before. And switch back. Yes. But this will always be like a little home away from home for me. I will always have, I don't know, this connection to the game because I spent so much time here. I don't agree to the decisions, many of the decisions that Blizzard made regarding game design. I don't like many of the expansions. I set out most of Shadowlands. I hated that expansion. I leveled like 2 or 3 characters through it, and I thought it was like very depressing and dull and boring. And I don't know, didn't like the things that they did with the lore of the game. But at least I checked it out, and you know, my active days as like a hardcore WoW player are over, but for some reason I always find myself coming back for like a few weeks or months, leveling my alts, going for some achievements I'm still missing, doing some old raid content by myself or with my girlfriend, and yeah, you know, and even though this is not very much like the world it used to be, because this is like the Cataclysm redesign, and there was so much different about the game with game mechanics and stuff. It's just, I don't know, it's really almost like coming home after being away for like 10 years and recognizing, like, you know, you recognize the street you grew up in, but then you see, okay, that building isn't there anymore, was knocked down, but there's a supermarket there now. Or that and that house, they have a new facade, you know, a new front door, or like a restructured front porch or something, I don't know. And or let's go back to that girlfriend analogy, where you still like that person you were with, but there's not any kind of like passionate love there anymore or anything. You broke up because you slipped apart, I guess, but you still have these great memories, and you give each other that knowing smile where you think back to like the fun you had together. But you know, it's just a memory, and that's what it feels like with this game. And I don't plan on doing many videos on World of Warcraft. I may look into the Warcraft games when it's about retro gaming, but and I don't plan on streaming when I level characters, because I guess that's really boring. I had some ideas what I could do, like visiting different zones and talking about the stories there or whatever, but there's nothing that I really am totally planning on right now. Maybe I'll do a little bit about World of Warcraft again at some point. I just wanted to use this opportunity to take a little flight around and tell you my story. I don't know if you care. I don't know if this was in any way, shape or form interesting to you. Maybe you share some of these memories, maybe not. But in any case, thanks for watching. And I will soon continue with my Ultima Let's Plays. I will surely continue with Dredge and playing some other games. I'm really looking forward to the new Sherlock Holmes game coming out tomorrow. On April 11th, it's Sherlock Holmes The Awakening. It's a remake of an older game, and it mixes Sherlock Holmes with the Lovecraft stories and like the characters, the great old ones and stuff. Don't want to call it the Cthulhu mythos, because that's not what Lovecraft called it. That's a term that came up later. And I played the demo of that. I didn't play the original, but I love Sherlock Holmes. I love Lovecraft stories, so you know that would be great. It's not it's been done before. I like 20 years ago I read like an anthology of stories that combined Holmes with Lovecraft, so it's not a new idea, but I'm looking forward. And there's other games coming out, and of course I want to do some more retro gaming and rediscover the Ultima games, or like discover them for the first time, because I didn't play all of them that much. So there's a lot of for me to remember and discover, and I'm looking forward to doing that and having you join me, hopefully. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening to me, and if you got any WoW related stories, let me know in the comments if you like. And if this is of no interest at all to you, you know, me flying around in this world and like rambling on about the good old days or whatever, don't worry, I won't do it, you know, that often. It was just something that I wanted to do. And one more disclaimer, I had like time off from work for like 10 days, and I wanted to use that time to get my channel started, and so that that's why I was able to put out quite a lot of videos in those last 10 days, most recent 10 days. Work starts again tomorrow, and I'm working at a really busy, stressful job. I mean, it often is, so I may not be able to keep up the tempo and push out like 2, 3, 4 videos a day, but I'll try my best, and I will mostly focus on the Ultima stuff. And I would like to thank each and every one of you for, you know, joining me, watching my videos, and making that decision that with all the other stuff that's available on YouTube, you want to give me a chance and, you know, check out my videos. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful for it. And I hope you'll join me again when I continue with Ultima and some more recent games. So, thanks a lot. Fare thee well, safe travels, bye bye, and thanks for watching.